Okay, go ahead, Mayor.
All right, we're ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. All right, good afternoon, everybody. We'll call this meeting to order. Chair recognizes Attorney Brown.
Good morning, Mayor and Commission. We'll request a meeting or an executive session for purposes of discussing litigation, pending or potential litigation, real estate, and personnel.
Commissioner from the 9th.
So move.
All right.
Second.
All right. Second from the Commissioner from the 4th. All right. Madam Clerk.
Okay. Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Ms. Davis. Ms. Davis. Mr. Fenoy. Mr. Fenoy.
He says yes.
Mr. Friend.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Was that Mr. Fenoy's affirmative? I mean,
Yeah.
Mr. Franum. Okay. Mr. Franum. Mr. Franum. Mr. Garrett.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan.
Yes.
Mr. Syed.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Harvey Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Franum out.
And Madam Clerk, I believe Commissioner Mary Davis is also out.
Out.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you. Okay. All right, we will now go into closed session. All right, so if everybody can just pause for a moment, we're going to go into closed session.
Mr. Brown, adjust your monitor.
Hello,
Senator Brown,
Yes,
if you
Mama.
flip your phone back around, thank you.
you got me?
All right, Chair recognizes Attorney Brown.
Mr. Mayor, Commission will request a motion to execute the closed meeting affidavit.
All right, Commissioner from the sixth.
So
So move.
move. I'm sorry, you got me speechless, Mr. Mayor. So move.
All right. Second from a commissioner from the ninth. All right. Madam Clerk, roll call vote.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Fenoy, Mr. Fenoy, Mr. Franum, Mr. Franum, Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams, Mr. Bobby Williams, Mr. Dennis.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Dennis Williams,
Probably needs to.
Yes.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Fenoy, Mr. Franum. That motion carries with Mr. Fenoy and Mr. Franum out.
All right. Attorney Brown.
Sir, Mr. Mayor will request a motion authorizing a settlement agreement between Jerry Sams and Augusta, Georgia, in which Augusta, Georgia agrees to pay a lump sum payment to Jerry Sams in the amount of $88,655.73 in exchange for Jerry Sams waiving and releasing all claims against Augusta, Georgia related to her present and past salary, compensation, and employment by signing agreement/release, general release of claims, and authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute the direction of Augusta Law Department.
Chair recognizes Commissioner from the first.
Yes.
So
Motion or
move. Emotions. Commissioner from the ninth.
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk, roll call vote.
Mr. Clark,
No.
Ms. Davis,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy,
Yes.
Mr. Franum, Mr. Franum, Mr. Garrett, Mr. Garrett, Mr. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Sias,
No, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum, Mr. Garrett.
No, ma'am.
That motion carries 6-3 with Mr. Franum out.
Okay. All right. Okay, Madam Clerk, I think that's all the business that's before us.
Yes, sir.
Attorney Brown, the closed meeting affidavit, we're here in the office, so you can certainly get that to us. And
Yes, sir.
we'll execute that along with any other documents that may need to be provided to us on today, since we're signing documents today, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Jeff et al., we're going to stand at ease for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back for the commission meeting. All right. Again, we're going to stand at ease for 5 minutes. Okay. All right, Madam Clerk. Attorney Brown.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, great. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
before we get started, on the alcohol petitions,
Yes.
we have one petition that is item number 23.
Okay.
If we can include those when we address the alcohol petitions at the beginning of the agenda.
Okay.
And let's see. And then we have one additional item to be added to the addendum agenda, which will be item number 19. Commissioner Dennis Williams is asking that that item be deleted.
But,
Item number 19 be deleted at the
Right.
request of Commissioner Dennis Williams.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a comment at that time regarding.
Okay, sure, absolutely. I think that's fine.
Thank
All
you.
right. And again, Madam Clerk, you got the addendum item. Hold on. Everybody suspend for a moment. Everybody suspend. Jeff, if you'll mute your microphones, everybody suspend.
Yes, sir.
Jeff, are you here?
Yes.
All right, we should still be in the breakout room. The general public hears all of the conversation we're having right now.
Right. You're in the public room right now.
Okay.
So do you want to be in the breakout room or you want to stay where you are?
The breakout room.
Okay.
Okay. And for when we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, I think I got this little flag over here on the on my right shoulder, if we're standing. All right, Madam Clerk, Attorney Brown, we call this meeting to order. Full commission meeting, April 21st, 2020. Madam Clerk.
This is Sheila.
Okay, Madam Clerk, you are still muted.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
At this time, we'd have our invocation, after which Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand?
All right, Administrator Sims, you're giving our invocation today.
May we pray. Father, thank you for allowing us to come together today to do your work. We ask you, as we are leaders in our community, that we make great decisions and lead the people as servants. We thank you for the blessings you bestow upon us, and we continue to ask for your favor. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America,
America,
And to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir.
We're here to do the business of the people, and we are prepared to proceed.
Yes, sir. And for the record, sir, if I could get a roll call for the regular meeting. Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Present.
Mr. Fenoy. Mr. Fenoy, are you present? Mr. Franum,
Present.
Mr. Garrett,
Here.
Mr. Hassan. Mr. Hassan, are you present? Mr. Syed,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, we have all accounted for except Mr. Fenoy.
I'm here.
All right. We have unanimous attendance today's meeting, sir.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we get started, we want to take just a few minutes. There was a conversation, as many of us are aware, on yesterday, the governor issued Executive Order 4.20.20.01. And that order was to begin reopening the state of Georgia, and in particular, a list of businesses that were on the list of non-essential businesses. It was posed earlier just what our posture would be going forward. And I want to take a minute to give the Commissioner from the 6th a moment to raise again his concern. Commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we all can hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, one of the concerns I had is just wondering, do we want to begin taking the temperatures of those who enter the building, whether they're employees, essential, what have you, at this particular time? The marshal already has the equipment, and just wondering, do we want to do that? You don't have to touch them, just put the scanner up to the city have a fever, and if they have a fever, just send them back home for all intents and purposes. If they don't have a fever, let them come on to work. I'm just wondering, do this body want to consider that at this particular time? And all I'm talking about, just for this building or other locations that the city is responsible for. And the reason why I'm saying, be very clear about that, I'm not talking about the judicial building itself. I'm talking about the other buildings that we run on a regular basis.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that. There's a lot of background noise. I would ask each of you to mute any background noise that you may have, televisions, radios, microphones. If you would do that, it bleeds over. Regarding that, I think what's probably most prudent is that as we continue to try to put our arms around the governor's executive order and what it means for us locally in terms of opening up, we know clearly he's articulated a series of things. I think it's going to be imperative that internally across the organization, Administrator Sims, our EMA director, and our other responders begin looking at that continuity of operations plan that was implemented so that we can begin thinking through how we bring people back up to and including allowing the general public back into the building. I don't think we're at that place yet in light of not only the executive order, but I think out of an abundance of caution, we need to have a clear plan of action in terms of how we're going to particularly be responding in those departments that are front facing to the general public. And so I think raising this concern at this time is appropriate, Commissioner from the 6th, but we should be measured in putting together a real plan of response, lest we find ourselves exposing not only ourselves, but the general public and the employees here in local government. So I think that requires them working on that together in terms of how that might be rolled out. All right, Commissioner from the 9th.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hear the concern of the District 6 Commissioner, but if the government is open at all for people to enter or employees to come to, can we do that? Is my question. I understand the severity of it. I understand the epidemic and all the stuff that's going on. But if we're going to be open, we ought to be open. If we're not going to be open, we ought to not be open. But if you start to scanning and seeing who has a fever, who don't have a fever, because someone's going to say, no, I don't have a fever. And someone's going to say, well, the barometer or whatever you're using for equipment, it says you do. And then I think we get into something. I understand the concern and I understand the caution that the District 6 Commission was trying to convey to us, but I just think that we'll be walking on some thin ice to do that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, well, again, I think what the Commissioner from the 6th is doing is just raising the awareness about the capabilities and something that we should be giving consideration to. All of this has to be done in concert with the CDC guidelines and making sure that we're not infringing on anyone's rights. And so I think, again, we'll take those things and begin having a broad discussion about that very quickly in light of where we are with the governor's recent order that will go effective on Friday. Okay. All right, Commissioner, thank you for that. Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're back to you.
Okay. Call your attention to our consent agenda, which consists of item 1. We have a recommendation with unanimous consent to refer item number 9 to our May 5th meeting. The deletion of item 15 and the deletion of item 19. With Commissioner Dennis Williams' comment regarding item number 19.
Okay. All right, I'm going to come to him in just a moment. All right, let's do this. I think without objection on those matters. And of course, we're moving the delegation portion to the May 5th meeting as well.
Right.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. At this point, all right, Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 2nd to speak on item number 19.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If everybody would refer back to their agenda book to tab number 19, I provided a somewhat of an update regarding the Secretary for the CSRA, and it just let you know what steps that we're in the process of taking now, trying to get the next level of improvement. So it's all listed on tab 9.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you. All right. Okay, Madam Clerk. All right, I don't again think there's any. All right, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the third. Commissioner Davis.
Mr. Mayor, I was going to see if we could consider consenting a couple of items.
Okay.
Are you ready to accept consent?
I'm ready. I'm ready for that.
Okay, I was going to see if the commission would be okay consenting number 18 and 25 and 26.
All right, could you repeat those?
Yes, number 18, 25, and 26.
All right. And I would also ask that we consent the addendum item, which is the court's grant award, and add that to the item as well for consent.
Great.
Mr. Mayor, what about number 17?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that as well.
And can we add 24 as well?
Yep.
Yes and no.
Okay. All right, Commissioner from the, I think I see the Commissioner from the first. Could you unmute your microphone? Commissioner from the first.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the 24 be added, but that's already been done.
Okay, all right, very well. Okay. All right, very well. Madam Clerk?
Okay. Our consent agenda is referring the delegation portion to our May 5th meeting, adding item number 9, referring it to the May 5th meeting, with the deletion of item 15 and 19, adding to the consent item number 18, item number 25, 26, and 24, along with the addendum item regarding acceptance of the grant award to Accountability Court.
Number
And
17. I'm sorry, item
Yes,
17.
item 17.
Item 17.
Yes.
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Second.
All right, got a second from the Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
consent agenda. Ms. Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams, Mr. Bobby Williams.
Be no
Hold
win.
on just a moment, Madam Clerk.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Unmute your microphone, sir. Hold on, Madam Clerk. Hold on.
Yes, ma'am.
The consent agenda passes, it's unanimous vote.
All right, excellent. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Top to bottom, sir?
I'm sorry.
Top to bottom,
For now.
alcohol petition.
Yes, alcohol petitions.
Okay, can you ask Mr. Lewis if they can get that?
Yes. All right, so yeah, we'll ask him to do that, and we're gonna move 23 up to that conversation, okay? All right, if we'll just, okay, I think we're connecting audio, Madam Clerk, just a moment.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And sir, are we going to take the votes as a companion vote?
Yeah, we will.
All of them?
We'll vote on all of them together, okay? All right, so, Ms. Walton,
Yes, sir.
okay, so here's our posture. If you would take items 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8, and read them in for the record because there are no objectors, and also include number 23.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we'll come back to number 5.
Okay, do you want me to read all of them at one time or separately as we do? So they can see their name.
Well,
That's correct.
we'll keep the petitioners there. Once she reads the application, allow the petitioner to approach and give their name and address. And for the record, Ms. Walton, if you could advise the commission if your office has received any objectors regarding these applications.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Bond, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Commissioner from the 6th, go ahead.
Yes, how do you address item number 5? Do you actually not to address it at this point?
Yeah, we're gonna come back. That's gonna be the last one we address.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it'll be standalone. We're only dealing with those other items right now. All right, Ms. Walton.
Okay. First item is alcohol number 20-8. It's a request by Ashkoff Patel for a retail packaged beer and wine license to be used in connection with Gas World, located at 4101 Windsor Spring Road. This application has been approved by the Sheriff Department and Planning and Development. I need you to come up and state your full name and your home address.
Okay. My name is Ashok Patel. My home address is 646 Emerald Crossing, Evans, Georgia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, this location did not have any objectors. Signs were posted and the advertisement was put in the newspaper. We did not receive any calls for objectors.
All right, next item.
Alcohol number 20-10 is a request by Alpha Patel for a retail packaged beer and wine license to be used in connection with Jump In Mart LLC, located at 1959 Kissing Bow Road. This application has been approved by the Sheriff Department and Planning and Development. We did not receive any calls. This application was posted in the newspaper and by signage at the building. We did not receive any calls from objectors.
Okay. My name is Alpa Patel and my home address is 210A New Petersburg Drive, Martinez, Georgia, 30907.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item is alcohol number 20-11, a request by Cecil Harrison III for a consumption on-premise liquor, beer, and wine license to be used in connection with Edgar's Above Broad, located at 699 Broad Street, 3rd floor. There will be Sunday sales. This application has been approved by the Sheriff Department and Planning and Development. There were no objectors to this application by phone or in person. There was signage and advertisement in the newspaper.
Cecil Harrison, 3803 Inverness Way, Martinez, Georgia, 30907.
Thank you.
Our next item is alcohol number 20-14. It's a request by Richard Roden for a consumption on-premise beer and wine license to be used in connection with Pyland LLC, located at 828 Cabela Drive, Suite 200. There will be Sunday sales. This application has been approved by the Sheriff Department and Planning and Development. There was signage posted and advertisement in the newspaper. No objectors.
Yeah, I'm Richard L. Roden. I live at 60 Conifer Circle, Augusta, Georgia, 30909.
Thank you.
Alcohol number 20-14, a request by Lynn Moshane for a consumption on-premise liquor, beer, and wine license to be used in connection with Crab du Jour of Augusta LLC, located at 3450 Wrightsboro Road, Suite 2080. There will be Sunday sales. This application was approved by the Sheriff Department and Planning and Development. There was signage posted, advertised in the newspaper. No objectors.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Mo Shanlin, and home address 706 West 21st Street, Lumberton, North Carolina 28358. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Ms. Walton.
Yes.
Ms. Walton, suspend for a moment. Chair recognizes Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm okay, Mayor. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ms. Walton, go ahead.
It's a alcohol number 20-16, a request by Mish Katal Islam for a retail package beer and wine license to be used in connection with Chevron Food Mart located at 502 Highland Avenue. This application has been approved by the Sheriff Department and Planning and Development. There was no signage on this location. It is an existing location. No objectors.
Okay.
Hello, Mishkatul Islam. My address is 3538 Glen Eagles Drive, Martinez, Georgia.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Item number.
Ms. Walton.
Yes, sir. I'm looking for my other applicant. Hold on, please.
Okay. All right. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 8th.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wanting to ask Ms. Walton if item 23 needed to go now as well.
Yeah, we're going to take 23 as well. I think that's who she's looking for.
My applicant for number 23 is not in the building. Would you prefer that I go ahead and read the item?
We can get it referred to the 5th.
He's in Florida for one, I know.
All right, we'll refer it to the 5th and take it up at that time.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right. So we'll entertain a motion on 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8.
Motion approved.
Item 23.
All right, Madam Clerk, could you repeat that?
Okay, and the referral of item 23 to the May 5th meeting.
Yes. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to approve.
Okay. All right, Commissioner from the 8th seconds that. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Garrett. Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Yes, okay, Mr. Clark, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Davis, Ms. Davis.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Fenoy? Mr. Fenoy? Mr. Franum?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett for the vote. Mr. Garrett for the vote.
Yes, again.
That was for the second. Mr. Hassan?
Mr. Hassan, unmute your microphone. Everybody unmute your microphone at this time.
Yes.
Mr. Syed?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams?
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Fenoy out.
I'm not out. I'm here. I vote yes, Ms. Bonner.
All right, thank you, sir. It's unanimous.
Okay.
You can't do that with a 6-3 vote.
Right.
that
Okay.
takes us to item number 5, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Ms.
Ms.
Walton?
Walton? Ms. Walton? All right.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Walton, we're on number 5 now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Tasha, can you get the minister? Okay. It's a new location. Alcohol number 20-12, a request by Yushivaben Patel for a retail package liquor, beer, and wine license to be used in connection with Top Notch Liquor located at 2751 Barton Chapel Road. This application was approved by the Sheriff Department and Planning and Development, and signage was posted and advertisement in the newspaper. And there are objectors to this application.
All right. Ms. Walton?
Yes, sir.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Yes,
You want
sir.
to hear from the objectors?
I think you have 2 there with you, Miss?
I have one here with me. I have a signed petition from all of the churches on Barton Chapel Road. I have a voicemail from the minister at Broadway. I can play that voicemail if you want me to. And I have one pastor from one of the churches here with us.
Okay. All right, so let's do this. Let me hear from the objector. We'll hear from the pastor. And the petition, again, if you can simply just hold that up, and that'll be sufficient. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can we get the applicant's name read into the record and all that first?
Yeah.
Yep,
Yes,
absolutely.
State your full name.
My name is Urvashi Ben Patel, and my address is 309 Bob White Trail, GoTown, Georgia, 30813.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ursaben Patel.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
This is the petition. It's a letter.
How many petitioners on that do we have?
I counted the signatures, and there are 103 signatures on this petition.
Okay.
Do you want me to read what the letter says for the record?
Yes, please.
It says the subject is a request to deny alcohol license for 2751 Barton Chapel Road. Dear Commissioners. Oh, you have it right there, Lena.
We have it there. All right, so it's been made available to us. Thank you. Okay. And as we step through what's being shared on the screen by IT, I suspect that the subsequent pages are in fact the petitioners. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very well. Okay. All right. Very well.
I got a question, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I'm coming to you. All right, Ms. Walton, thank you. And also information technology, thank you. All right, let's take a series of questions at this point. All right, Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I see your hands. I got everybody.
Question to Ms. Walton.
Yeah.
Does this application meet the guidelines as far as the distance requirement, Ms. Walton?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, and I guess my point is, if it meets the guidelines, and I'm in support of the church as well as the community, but will that cause this body to get sued if we don't approve it? That's my question. Maybe I should call it Mr. Brown, our legal counsel, not you, Ms. Walton.
Yeah, I think that's probably
I want to
appropriate.
pose that to him.
Yeah, that's probably appropriate. All right. Again, I mean, these are routine matters. We've debated them before, and this commission has again, supported and also denied. Attorney Brown, if you want to weigh in on that, you certainly can. Otherwise, I'm going to go to the next question. Attorney Brown.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner from the 9th has a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown, if the applicant meets the guideline, will that put this city at risk of being sued or not? Question.
Well, if the facts are as you suggest by your question, if they meet the guidelines. There will have to be some basis. The basis for denial would be that they do not meet the guidelines.
Okay.
All right. Commissioner from the 4th.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And to the attorney's point, this is our subjective part of an examination of a case, not the objective part. However, in many cases, I always want to support the community. However, in this case, I find it a little bit different. This particular building is an old Wife Saver building located on Barton Chapel. And it is within, there are commercial buildings located on both sides, in front and the back of this building. So I'm concerned that this building is really wrapped in a commercial zone. And there are no immediate buildings or things or churches or homes close to this building, except on Old Barton Chapel Road. So with that, in fact, from what this location, I have no objection. I will support this petition. But normally I always want to support the community, but I see that this one is wrapped up in a commercial area completely. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chair, now Commissioner from the 5th.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion that we approve the petition for alcohol.
All right, Commissioner from the 8th.
Second that motion.
All right, got a motion and a second. Commissioner from the 8th.
Second. Well,
okay. All right, very well. All right, we're voting on this matter at this time. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Ms. Davis.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy.
Yes.
Miss Bonner.
All right, everybody suspend. Ms. Walton.
You did not give the objector at least time to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, we did not. That's correct. We heard from the petitioners through the information that was provided to us, but we'll let them hear. We want to hear from them verbally. All right. All right, everybody suspend.
Hi, my name is Pastor Jay Kim. I'm a pastor at Augusta Korean Methodist Church in Barton Chapel. My address is 3959 Hammonds Ferry, Evans, Georgia. I'm here to make a request on behalf of our church and also Korean American community for you not to request the alcohol license to this location for the following reasons. One, there are already several package stores in the area, as well as this is a very family-oriented venues such as McDonald's, Burger King. There is a childcare in near vicinity as well. And we're asking that with the increase of more liquor store, that there may be higher crime rates. There may be more difficulties around surrounding this community here. It's already a pretty high crime community. So we're asking you not to grant the liquor license at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Walton, we have another objector?
No, sir, that was it.
All right, okay, thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, we were in the midst of voting. There's a motion to approve the request. If you'll continue.
Mr. Franum. Mr. Franum.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett? Mr. Garrett?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan?
No.
Mr. Pius?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams? Mr. Marion Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries 9-1, with Mr. Hassan voting no.
Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, number 10.
Item number 10, discuss city's discrimination against minorities and women. Commissioner
All right.
Marion Williams.
Mr. from the ninth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had this put on the agenda to hopefully bring some light to all of the money we spent on a disparity study that came back and told us what we already knew before we did the study. There's a lot of still discrimination with minorities and women that we have not addressed, that we act as if it's going to just go away by itself. So I put this on the agenda, hopefully that we will create some dialogue. So for us as a body to make sure that we address those issues. I don't want to get into naming in particular departments, but there are some issues today that we still hadn't got resolved. We've been talking about around it. We act like it's going to just disappear. Here it is now, 2020, Mr. Mayor, and we still dealing with some issues that we should have been addressed a long time ago. Now, if I need to name some departments, I can. My attorney probably will tell me this is not the venue to do that, but versus putting a particular department on blast, I thought sure that I would create some dialogue with my colleagues to at least get them interested and find out where that is and how we're doing that. We have given raises to men that we hadn't given to some other women and requested it. And it looks bad on this government, I believe, Mr. Mayor. So that's why I asked for this to be put on the agenda.
Okay. Again, are there any other questions, concerns, or comments from any other members of the commission? Commissioner from the fifth.
No comment.
Mr. Mayor, I got another comment since my colleagues don't have one. I've got another.
All right, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the ninth again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, we talked about disparity study we're gonna have to spend money on again. And the reason we're gonna spend that money on it, and I'm amazed now that, you know, we got some church mouse. You know, they don't say very much to the mayor, they just kind of slip by. But I'm amazed that nobody else seemed to think or even have a conversation about the wrongdoing or the wrong things that have been done in this community and still being done. Now, it ain't as prevalent as it used to be, but it still exists. And there's some issue that we've been dealing with for quite some time. So I guess the next thing for me to do is just put those particular departments back on and bring it to our attention that way, versus just talking about the women and minority that $500,000 we spent years ago is gone. Now we got to spend probably another $500,000 to do another study. So, and I think the study, from my remembrance from our attorney, that study has to be done. Not that we just want to do one, but it has to be done. But when we act like it don't exist, then I think we are part of the problem. So we're gonna spend that kind of money. We hired a DB disadvantaged person to come into the government. We hired a person to handle that in the name of Ms. Edwards to look into those type situations. But we act as if, you know, that position shouldn't have been filled. That position is filled, and I tend to think they're trying to do what they can to alleviate some of that stuff. But I guess there's no other commissioner feel the same way that I feel, see it the same way I see it. I think that's not existing, but that's a bad situation still going on today, and we need to get a handle on that.
Right. Okay. All right. We'll receive this as information, Commissioner from the 9th, and as you think about what to do next, we'll have some more conversation about it.
All right, Mr. Mayor, thank you, sir. But I mean, I guess I need to put some particular departments on Front Street. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I get calls all the time. I meet people all the time saying about what's going on and how they feel. And people are afraid. They don't want to come to the door. They don't want to knock on the door because they know they're not going to be supported. And I think that's really bad on this body.
Right. All right. All right. We'll receive it as information. Madam Clerk, we'll go to item number 11.
Item 11.
Yes.
Discuss Commissioner's authority to direct city contractors. Requested by Commissioner Marion Williams.
All right, Commissioner from the 9th.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I had this put on the agenda in lieu of what had happened here back a few weeks ago with the District 5 Commissioner, District Bobby Williams. A young man, contractor, been known for years, started off on the wrong foot, got his life together, got married, and started several businesses and would pull off a job. I really was disappointed about that. So I think that was abuse of power. I think that wasn't a way to do that. That was an incident that happened. And in that incident, the sheriff department should have been notified in order to clear the incident up. But for whatever reason, that didn't happen. This young man got pulled off a job and put on another job. So I contacted the contractor as well myself and said that if someone can pull him off, I can put him back because none of us have any more authority than anybody else. And I just think it's bad when we allow that kind of situation to take place. I know this whole body knows about this situation. Now, I don't know if they got any comment about it or not, but this whole body knows about it. And I just think that that's abuse of power. We're elected to serve the people. If you're going to serve the people, and that's what we need to do, to be a servant. Who got an authority and who don't have authority, we all got the same authority. If there's somebody in this city, any side of this city need my help and I can help them, I'm going to try my best to help them. If I can advise them to something, I'm going to do that. So I just think there's an issue, Mr. Mayor, that we need to be mindful of. And I spoke with you about it. So we need to hear your comments, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a concern that we have here in the city that certainly warrants broad conversation. And I think there's an opportunity for us to talk about it. I certainly wasn't prepared necessarily to be talking about it today, but I do know that this is worthy of having some broad discussion just in terms of the interactions again across the organization between electeds and non-electeds. And I'll leave that one there. I lumped those two together, 10 and 11. That's brought obviously room for conversation about that. And we can talk about that at the appropriate time. All right, Chair recognized Commissioner from the 4th. I see his hand up. Yes, sir.
Would we accept this as information?
Okay.
Second.
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
All right. Yes, sir.
I mean, before we accept the information, I mean, I think that, I mean, if we're gonna accept the information, I need to put it back on the agenda to talk about. I mean, because there's some underlying stuff that had not been said yet. Now, I'm trying to be as professional, as cordial, and understanding as I can. But don't push that button today because it's been pushed already enough. And here we are now in a position to talk about it, and we're not talking about it. So, I mean, I can put it back on the agenda, and we can talk about it at our next meeting. We're here today now. We can keep it for months and months and months, at least until December. I got until December, unless the Lord called me home first. But I ain't gonna let this go because nobody asked no question. My colleague had an article, I think it was in the paper, said he wanted to hear both sides. He hadn't heard anything. He hadn't talked to me. He hadn't, you know, I made a call to the district commission. Hadn't got a return call back from him yet. He hung up on me when I called him. He hadn't returned my call yet. I want to know how I got drugged into a situation. I hadn't said nothing to anybody. And so that it made me think there's some underlying statements that want to be made. I ain't no bear, but I ain't no chicken. Now, you know that. So if you want to talk, I mean, we need to talk and we need to be professional about this and handle this and move on with the city business. But I'm tired of giving. I'm sick and tired of giving, then nobody wants to give back. So I'm not doing that no more. I said that before. This year's a different year. My last one, promise you. Y'all can have it. But I just think it's unprofessional for us to act in that we don't see what's going on, and we act like school kids. And I mean, maybe I'm the main one, but hey, I know my role as elected official. I know the rules. I came in to serve the people. I didn't come in to be disrespectful to any ladies, whether young or old. The businessman and his wife wants to be present, wants to talk themselves. But since we're streaming these meetings, they weren't familiar about coming in and doing that, but they want to be a president. So you know, we can do it now or do it later, but we're gonna do it.
Okay. All right. So again, I think, Commissioner, there's an appetite to have a conversation. I suspect at a later time, maybe it's appropriate to have those that you are concerned about and speaking on behalf of to come in as a delegation and have them give an opportunity to be heard at that time. Again, let's receive this as information. It's certainly well within the rights to put it back on the agenda, and maybe during the May 5th timeframe, we can talk about it then. But what I would encourage is for us to talk about it on the outside of May 5th, leading up to that, and have some real thoughtful conversation with our colleagues about the concerns, what that looks like, and how best to address those things going forward. That's what I would suggest. All right, we're going to receive this as information, Madam Clerk, and let's go to item 12. And while we're looking at item 12, I think it's appropriate to take 12 and 14 together.
Okay.
I don't believe the commissioner from the 8th would object to that, taking 12 and 14 together. Commissioner Garrett, Commissioner Assam, okay?
Why did I do 12, 13, and 14 together?
Let's take 13 separately. That's a different matter. It has implications, but it's a different matter. Okay. All right, 12 and 14.
Thank you, Mr. I'm sorry.
Okay, item number 12 is to approve tasking the administrator to review the current pay policy approved by the commission on April 6th and right size with the April 14th Georgia Municipal Association communication regarding hazard pay and report results to the commission, requested by Commissioner Ben Hassan. Item number 14 is to discuss hazard pay policy for employees past April 30th and identify the funding source. Requested by Commissioner Brandon Garrett.
All right, Commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, everyone can hear you.
All right, thank you, sir. I just wanted to just per our conversation at our last commission meeting, we had just received information from GMA the very same day, within an hour before we actually conduct the meeting. We were in a meeting. We were in discussion in a different place as colleagues in terms of who we should compensate and who we should not compensate. So we decided to continue on what we already had in hand, which was to pretty much pay everybody who came to work, because it was a shelter in place. As a result of it, they were not sheltered in place in their home. They came to work, so we left it at that particular point. And my request at that particular time was just to leave it in place for the next 2 pay period, which is the current one, as well as the next one, which will be the end of, I think, May 1st. And beyond that, I wanted to give the administrator an opportunity to right size it based on GMA at that particular time, so we can take all the guesswork out of it and how we feel about it on the personal level. But I do have one question for the administrator, Mr. Mayor, but that's what my motion, my agenda item was about, attempting to right size it, going beyond the second pay period from where we are now.
Okay. All right. You want to go ahead and ask the question of the administrator?
Yes, I just wanted to demonstrate. Did you get an opportunity to get with the employees or the elected officials in the judicial building about their staff and who was coming to work?
Yes, Commissioner, we were able to reach out to the courts and other departments that were not initially listed in the previous list that we provided, and the current list includes those personnel from the departments as well as the courts.
Okay. Just want to make sure that it never just as my concern about make sure we use that as an instrument that we can agree upon, that we'll look at it from the GMA side and move forward and right sizing it beyond the second pay period.
All right, Commissioner from the 8th.
Thank you, Mayor. I concur with much of what my colleague was just talking about right sizing this in regards to specific departments, specific individuals that are eligible for these payments. But I want to go one step farther and go back to the administrator's original request. Instead of the $5 an hour, I think that we need, if we are going to go past the May 1st date, we need to have another conversation about whether we're going to adjust the pay as well.
All right, pose the question. Go ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, we need to know whether this is going to be extended past the May 1st deadline.
Again, I think we're at that place where, in light of the previous conversation we had around continuity of operations plans, as we see the state shifting its course of direction, I think it's going to require the administrator and his team and other partners to give strong consideration to how we begin shifting as well. And I don't think that question can necessarily be fully answered today, but I do know that an answer can be provided by Thursday in terms of what the continuity of operations plans will look like going forward in advance of the first wave of openings on Friday this week. And so, again, that's what I'll pause there, and we can continue to have some conversation. We'll come back to your concern, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner from the 4th. All right, I see everybody's hand. Commissioner from the 4th.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
I
sir.
think at this point we've done great service to the city of Augusta, and particularly to our city employees who are out there. But in light of the changing situation that we are encompassing with the governor having opened things back up, I think right now, unless we find an extreme compelling reason, I move that we terminate the hazardous pay effective at the end of 1 May. And if there's a compelling reason, we can come back to it, as you said, for April 3rd. We can have a contingency plan. But I was a strong proponent of the hazardous pay But I also have, believe at this point, it's time to consider terminating that unless there's a compelling reason to move forward with it. So at this point, I move that we terminate the hazardous pay at the end of 1 May. At
Second.
the end of the pay period.
Second.
Okay. All right. We got a motion to terminate hazard pay effective 1 May at 11:59 midnight.
Mayor Davis.
I'm coming to you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm coming to you. All right. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 9th.
Well, since that motion been made, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to support the motion because I think the District 4 Commission is right. My thing is that you talk about what GMA is saying, the people who are in hazardous waste. Who says that what GMA says is the one that's going to be exposed? So I got the mission, but since we got a motion on the floor, I'm going to support the motion.
All right, thank you. All right, Attorney Brown.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to seek some clarity from the Commissioner Sias. Do you mean the pay to terminate, hazardous pay to terminate at the end of a pay period?
If I may, Mayor?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
And that will be the pay period ending 1 May.
Okay, I was, maybe I'm confused about when the pay period ends. I was trying to get some confirmation maybe from the administrator. Is that the pay period?
Why don't we do that?
Pay
But
period
again, I
is
think
1
the commissioner from the 4th is accurate based on previous conversations with finance in our previous conversation, okay? And we'll clarify that. But again, I think from a policy standpoint, effective May 1, consistent with the current pay period, the termination of hazard pay will be at that date.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Sias.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right, Administrator Simmons, you want to add anything to that, sir?
No, I was just, I will have the exact end of the pay period for you all. I just texted the finance director on that. But
Okay. All right, again, from a policy standpoint, date May 1, 11:59 p.m. All right, Commissioner from the 1st. Unmute your microphone, sir.
Unmute.
Right.
Am I
Yes,
on
sir.
mute, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I think that we need to take a real serious look at hazardous pay. I mean, these are some difficult times that especially our first responders are experiencing. And I don't think that the risk that they're in is gonna end on May the 1st. If that's what my colleagues want to do, then so be it. But in the meantime, I believe that before this world comes to an end, we're gonna have some more situations in Augusta, Georgia, that puts our employees at risk. And when the employees respond to that risk, then I think that we need to be able to compensate them. So I would like to for us to take a real serious look at our hazardous pay policy, see who that would apply to, and if another situation comes up, then we will know who will get impacted by it and what the additional compensation would be.
Okay. All right. I've got a motion and a second. The motion is clear around the termination of hazard pay And again, as such, at any point in time, we have the ability to come back and revisit that. We've got a template in place to do that, Commissioner, from the first. And I think we'll pick it up at that appropriate time, but we've got a motion. Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, hold on. All right.
Thank
Chair,
you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and I'm gonna support my colleague's motion, but at the same time, let administrator to do that, because in the event as we move forward, we realize we're gonna have to extend it and we'll know who that goes to. I don't want the administrator to be caught flat-footed and we come back in on May the 1st or May the 2nd, or whenever it may be, trying to figure out what that looked like. I still believe within reason, he should get that to a point where we can look at our first responders and things. Because to my colleague position from the first, because we definitely don't want to leave them out there assuming as of what they hear today, that we're going to remove them from that place, that they will have some sense of support to continue that process if need be. So I still would encourage the administrator, in light of what happens here, to have that information in the event that we need it, and we'll know exactly who needs to be compensated in light of the motion that's on the floor.
Well, I'm going to throw a cog in the wheel, and the reality of it is this. Again, I think we're all operating out of an abundance of caution around the governor's executive order. But as it relates to Augusta, Georgia, we are going to continue to stay safe. My encouragement is for folks to continue to shelter in place and be at that place, which means that our first responders, up to and including law enforcement, they have not been absolved of the responsibility to enforce the governor's shelter in place order. And so these are folks who are going to continue to be on the front lines in light of the motion that's there. So regardless of whether we start opening things back up, all that is done is complicated. The EMA director's job, the sheriff's job, and those folks who are first responders, that's all that's done. It's simply complicated their job in terms of trying to provide law enforcement and or emergency aid and or response. So,
Mr. Mayor, I don't see that what you said just now as a cog in the wheel. I see it as a support for my position. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Commissioner from the 4th.
Just one final comment. When I made my motion, I think I was very clear that we will terminate that on the 1st, effective the end of 1 May. However, that if we find a need to come back and redo hazardous pay, that was part of my statement. So it's not the fact that I said drop it and let's walk away and don't think about it again. No way under the sun that I said that. I said we terminate it, and then if we need to revisit it, we need to come back and enact it again, we can do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You absolutely said that. Thank you, sir. All right, I've got a motion and a second, Madam Clerk. Roll call vote.
Mr. Clark?
He's having technical difficulties, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Ms. Davis?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy?
No.
Mr. Franham?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan?
Yes.
Mr. Science?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams? Mr. Bobby Williams?
Commissioner Williams, unmute your phone.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Is Mr. Clark back with us?
No, ma'am.
Yes.
He's not back yet.
Yes.
Okay. We just can't see him. Commissioner?
I can't see anything. I just heard that the vote yes.
Would you like the motion read back to you, sir?
No, I heard bits and pieces of it, and I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries with Mr. Fenoy voting no.
All right, thank you. Item number 13.
Item number 13 is to discuss rollover vacation time policy in regards to vacation and personal time being recalled by the fire department, requested by Commissioner Brandon Garrett.
Commissioner from A, go ahead, sir.
I brought this up because it was brought to my attention that a lot of our first responders, mainly the fire department, their vacation and personal time was recalled and canceled when the COVID outbreak started. And, you know, I understand that move, but a lot of them are being told that their vacation time that they accrue or their PTO time, some of those were close to their maximum amounts. And so, you know, they were trying to use time during that time period so they would not max out. But now since their time was canceled, they don't have the ability to keep accruing time. So the administrator actually came up with a great suggestion. I agree with it. Basically to waive the maximum amount of hours that our employees can accrue this year. And, you know, that way it'll give the employees time to be able to use their vacation time later on this year while still accruing vacation.
All right, thank you. Administrator Sims.
Thank you, Commissioner Garrett. Yes, I provided you all a memorandum for a recommendation for us to consider relaxing the accrual limits for the remainder of the calendar year for our employees. Currently, the limit for our non-SES employees are 288 and our SES employees are 350. And we recognize because of where we are, our current state, many of our employees had to not use vacation during this time, and they will be forced, not on their own, but they will be forced to not accrue vacation time. So we're asking for consideration to allow the employees to continue to accrue vacation time until the end of the year.
So is that Mr. Mayor, so would that be the memorandum that the administrator submitted dated April 20th, accrual vacation time?
I believe that to be the case, Madam Clerk.
Okay, so the motion would be to approve the recommendation of the administrator dated April 20th, 2020.
That is correct.
Okay.
So move.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, roll call vote.
Mr. Clark. Ms. Davis? Okay. I think I got Mr. Clark as yes. Mayor, did you?
I'm having a hard time hearing him. I don't know if he's in or out.
I think he's out again.
Okay, Ms. Davis?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy? Mr. Fenoy?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Franham?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sires?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Clark? That motion carries with Mr. Clark not voting. Okay. Item number 16. Discuss one Augusta COVID-19 emergency relief requested by Mayor Hardy Davis.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We've had some robust conversation about this matter. I shared some information on this past weekend with everyone, up to and including providing a response to a series of questions that Commissioner Sires has raised. And I want to, again, pose to this body that in these unprecedented times, we've got a unique opportunity to do something transformative and helpful to our broader community. And I would hope that, again, after having a chance to look at what was sent out this weekend, that each of you is prepared to have that conversation around what potentially could be done in the interim to support small businesses. There's a letter that we all just received an hour or so ago from the Community Foundation, Shell Berry, that I think is helpful in terms of what their capabilities are, but more importantly, what they are already doing in terms of the nonprofit community. And so with that being said, I think our focus today is around what we can do to support small businesses. And in particular, not only support the small businesses that we know of at this point, but give an eye towards the other conversation that I know was posed to us around any additional support that the commission could provide in another agenda item. And so I want to pause here, take some questions. There were some revised guidelines that were sent out earlier today at about 11:20. I think in light of some conversations that have happened since that time, there may be some other alternatives in terms of how we could potentially handle this. And so I'll pause there and let's take some questions and a comment. All right. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 4th.
Thank you, sir. May I want to applaud the concept and idea you have about helping our local small businesses through this unprecedented time. I think that is admirable, and I appreciate your vigor in doing that. At this point, I think the funding is a main issue, but we have an alternative, and I thank you for being open to looking at that. Number one, any money that we put out of the general fund or the reserve will be a further problem for this commission and this governing body to do this in our community. However, we do have an alternative source that's already been allocated through the HCD, a COVID allocation from the federal government of approximately $1,016,000 or 16,000, something as that. And I want to strongly suggest that we not do any of the general fund issues, but go ahead and utilize that particular program through our housing community development and take that $1 million and strategically help some of our small businesses, and consider that a motion.
Second.
Okay. All right, I got a motion and a second to utilize the CARES Act funding. And again, that would be the source of funds as opposed to using what was proposed last week around how we would do that. And I certainly support that 100%. All right, we got a host of hands up, and I'm going to go to the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, who will handle, and if we use the CARES Act, will the local committee of community leaders be involved with that process? Because I think some people are concerned that friends and family might try to get this money, as well as, people that are close to commissioners or employees of government. So can you explain the committee that would be comprised of to hand out the money first?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I'm going to share, and again, as I said, at 11:20, there was a document sent out. We've had some further conversations since that time, and I want to share a screen with you all, and then we'll send out a document. Let me share this screen with you of what's being proposed. The host has disabled participant screen sharing. Jeff, IT. Okay, thank you. Okay. Again, in these later conversations this afternoon, because with the CARES Act funding, this could actually be handled truly as a grant process, solely as a granting process. And so what's being proposed is that there would in fact be an application. I want to start here at the review committee process. And that is what's being recommended is that because we want to make sure that there's broad support from the commission, is that we take the finance committee chairman, the mayor pro tem, because of the work that the community foundation has done in terms of executing grants and their expertise in that area, to recommend that Shell Berry, president, be a part of that discussion, and that we take a representative from the Augusta Metro Chamber Preferably, that would be Sue Parr as the president. We've not had a conversation with her at this point, but with Monique Rain-Wins, who's the assistant vice president, someone from the banking community who would provide, again, some subjectivity and be very thoughtful in looking at this process. As we go through that, individuals will be able to, i.e. eligible businesses, to submit their applications online through a portal. Applications will be submitted by 5 p.m. On Monday of each week until funding is exhausted. That Monday is important because what we understand in the city of Augusta is that checks are cut and processed on every Friday, but there's a deadline on Wednesday for that to happen. Individuals and businesses could go to the website, download that, and those applications would be forwarded and processed through the committee. They would be, again, on a regular basis, processing those as quickly as possible. And as you see here, Mayor Pro Tem, that they will be reviewed on a weekly basis. Applicant funding through the finance department, committee chair and/or Mayor Pro Tem, working in concert with these individuals, would then be disseminating that funding until those resources are exhausted.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to come back to you. I just want to make
question.
sure I shared that, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to take the hands as they come up. Okay.
I got one more
Mayor Pro
question.
Tem, continue.
This question's for Attorney Brown.
Yeah.
Attorney Brown, is everything and what's being presented legal and we can do, doesn't affect the gratuities clause in your estimation?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It is, I'm trying to see what's on the screen, which is not showing up very well. It is not clear to me which funds now is being proposed inside of Commissioner Sayers' motion.
It's the CARES Act funding, Attorney Brown. It's strictly the federal funding, the allocation that we're receiving in the amount of $1,061,000.
Mr. Mayor, can you take that down, please? Because I can't see it. Mr. Mayor, can you take that application down?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna take it down. Yeah.
I do not have access. I don't think I do have access to this document or the guidelines of the CARES Act program. And that I would need to, my department would need to review that before I could render an opinion on it.
Could they do that over the next 10 minutes and get us back to us? I mean, it's an important decision.
I'll forward this to you.
That would be good.
The letters that the commission received.
And my last question is for the mayor. Mayor, can you talk about, you said Atlanta, is this the same aspect of what Atlanta did, or is there any other cities that did something like this where they used the CARES Act, or did they do just their general fund?
Mayor Pro Tem, I appreciate that. Yesterday, the city of Atlanta approved a measure where they used fund balance to the tune of $7 million to do what we were originally proposing. That is being sent over to me, those items that were included in that, but they use fund balance as a number of other cities have as well. If I take the city of Columbia, South Carolina, they use enterprise dollars from their utilities department and environmental services to do the same. Again, as I've said, in particular to the commissioner from the 4th, as we've had these conversations and some others, I think it's certainly appropriate to use the CARES Act funding. It is well within our right. Many of you are aware that last year we gave out Seeds for Life grants, and those were grants. Those were federal dollars that we used that have been allocated through CDBG money through housing and community development. These dollars, the $1 billion, is in fact the CARES Act CDBG allocation. That's what those dollars are. There's already precedent that's been established. We gave effectively $150,000 last year with regards to the Seeds for Life grant, and they were CDBG dollars. So it's the same source of funding, but it's specifically tied to the CARES Act for 2020, which is where these resources are being identified from.
Mr. Mayor.
I got a whole host of hands. I'm coming to you, Commissioner. You can put it down. All right. Commissioner from the 8th.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So, you know, this has been helpful if we could have all this information before the meeting, because, you know, we've been having conversations back and forth, and, you know, this is the first that we're hearing that we're going to use an alternate funding mechanism for this. So let me just ask a couple questions. First of all, what are the qualifications? I don't see that written anywhere on the document you just showed us. And you know, is there a, you know, I guess that's my first question. What are the qualifications for small businesses here locally?
So Commissioner Garrett, the eligibility requirements are the same as what you have seen from this weekend. So the document that you received on Friday, the same eligibility requirements would apply. Okay. The only thing that's effectively changing is you see the review committee that was placed on the screen a moment ago, the process in terms of how the review committee would handle the applications. That's the only thing that's changed. So the reality of it is you've actually gotten the documents and they still are germane. Those are the ones that you received on this past weekend that talked about the eligibility and or the application process. That still holds true. What has changed effectively, and again, these are just late standing conversations, is what a potential source of funding would be in terms of how this could be addressed and or handled.
So we're going from $3 million, as you suggested last week, to the 1.5 or whatever we're getting from the CARES Act.
That's correct.
This question is for Attorney Brown. I'm going to ask one more time. Do you see anything legally with the way that we're handling this program?
Could you repeat that, please, Commissioner Garrett?
Do you see any legal implications for this program?
I have not had opportunity to review the change of funding program that the mayor is referring to. What I had previously reviewed was what he proposed at the last meeting, which was money that had been previously identified for links and had been terminated in 2016. I wasn't aware of that there would be an effort to use the CARES Act money and what the parameters are. The CARES Act can be spent from different programs, including seed money, which is not loans, which are grants. And then there are loan programs under CARES Act for small businesses as well. And that will really need to be reviewed.
Would you suggest that we need to, you know, maybe pause on this for another week, since Congress just authorized another $450 billion for the small business loans that are going out?
Well, that would be a policy question, and I think I did not enter to a policy argument. But in order for me to give an opinion whether it's legally okay in terms of what we're planning to do or how it's going to be done, I would need time to review to understand how do we plan to implement this $1 million assistance to small business. And I would like to be able to speak with the housing director specifically about it as well, if that department is going to be administered because of the guidelines related to HUD.
All right, thanks, sir. I'll wait.
Okay, all right, Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 9th.
I've been having my hand up in there.
I'm going in the order of the hands. They had their hands up even before you did, Commissioner. I told you I got you. I'm coming to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I walked into me with my hand up, so I'm but listen, Mr. Mayor, thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, I'm trying to wrap my head around this situation when we talked about the other money. But now, when you talk about small businesses, we got to be really careful. I'm worried about the screening, you know, the process for screening, but you got some businesses who are legally businesses who got license, who have been struggling ever since they opened up. Then you got some business that have been open up for a while, who were doing pretty good in the businesses, and then they need help now. But how are we going to determine how they going to turn those really small businesses? Really now they in dire need now because they've been shut down. You mentioned some, like for instance the barbershops. I mean, you got some barbershops who bought a life on Silver Augusta, who pay light bill every month, who do, but they don't have the expertise to go into the email account and file something with some other group and to get there. How are we going to determine who's qualified, not who's qualified, who's able to receive or not ready to receive? I've got some issues when I look at the business that have been successful for 20 years, then I see business who've been trying to get on their feet for 20 years. I mean, we got to distinguish that now. I'm not against this program. We get federal dollars in here. We get federal money every year that we very much need for the low to moderate income situation around Augusta. And if we don't address them when we address everybody else, we're gonna be taking from the poor, giving to the rich, so to speak. And I hope nobody don't get that twisted. But we gotta get those small businesses as well. We gotta be inclusive. I guess that's all I'm saying. How do we do that? That's all I need to know from the attorney, from commissioner, from the mayor, from the clerk. Somebody tell me how are we gonna do that? Hello? Am I mute?
No, Commissioner. Again, I think that. So let me calibrate everybody. There are two things here. One, when we first began this conversation, we talked about forgivable loans using resources that were originally part of this thing that we refer to as the linked deposit program. In 2016, on July the 19th, this commission abolished what was referred to as the linked deposit program, and those dollars, effectively $5.6 million, were placed in the general fund. That conversation is where we started at. And over the weekend, many of you had conversations with the attorney. I've had conversations with the attorney, and the question of gratuities came up. And whether state statute allowed it from the constitutional standpoint, where you could take general fund dollars and give them out. And that question persisted. I responded to Commissioner Sias' series of questions, of which all of you received a copy of that, to include the attorney, as well as the fact that the attorney and I spoke briefly on the phone as we tried to step into this conversation. So those things have happened. The only thing that's changed effectively from what you received on Friday to today is that there were other conversations about what best funding source to do this. So you take the conversation of any gratuity off the table. As I said a moment ago, this body has approved already utilizing community development block grant dollars, of which are legally permissible, and that has been done on more than one occasion. And that agency to work through that was Housing and Community Development. What's being proposed today is to utilize the same source of funding, community development block grant funding, for this express purpose of helping our small businesses right now with short-term funding of 2 to 4 weeks, that as you go back to the survey, of which you all have a copy of as well, the majority of those respondents, 457 in total, said that their monthly operating expenses are $5,000 or less. And so we have the ability to execute on that and to respond. And so, Commissioner, from the 9th, we would take a same approach of folks would apply. That application would ask a series of questions related to their revenue, their monthly expenditures. They would be required to continue to maintain their employees during this period of time. And this would simply be stopgap funding that would allow them to continue to function and operate. No different, again, than the Seeds of Life funding that this body approved last year on multiple occasions. All right, let me do this, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to go to the commissioner from the 6th, and then I'll come back to you, okay? Commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I think what you're proposing is a good idea in terms of the source of the funding. I'm not quite sure you can allocate all of the money because in each grant, as you know, there's about a 10 to 15% that is for administrative purposes. Also, you got a part of it that it goes for the public side of it, and then you come back and there's a part that you can use the rest for grant purposes, as you're suggesting. So don't look at 100% of that. The other problem I think you're gonna have, Mr. Mayor, is that there's two steps that has to go before we can allocate this the way we're suggesting. And that is number one, this CARES money here has to be approved. They have to approve the plan, the way you plan to use it, and you have to submit that plan. It has to be approved by them first. And then I'm not quite sure whether you can take the CARES Act money and knowing that in your ACD department, you have the wherewithal to give out grants. You're going to take it and move it out of there and give it to someone else to distribute the grants from a financial perspective. Because I know we do other services, I get that. But now you're talking about strictly grants. So there's a lot of variables that need to be answered before you do that. But the first thing something has to be submitted back to them for them to approve what you're about to do. And you make sure you got all of their directives. And then on the best side, you're not going to be able to use all of that $1 million just for that purpose. Because there's administrative fees there. There are fees that you have to give out to public entities for whatever reasons those may be. And then you can talk about the grant purposes there. But I'm not quite sure. So kind of back up again. I know it has to be approved. So we can't make that decision today. You can say based on approval, we can make some things. But also, those things have to happen. And I'm not quite sure where you can take and move that money that you allocate for grants out of your entity who can provide the grants and give it to them and stand up another entity to do that. I'm not quite sure about that. All those are great people. Some of them I've talked to them recently are great assets to this community. But I think we're going to need approval from HUD to make all this happen, what we're discussing.
Mr. Mayor.
All right. Commissioner, so Administrator Sims.
Yeah, I just wanted to add the same thing, Commissioner, is that from my understanding, there is a 20% requirement for admin, as well as there are different percentages for the grant. We would like to make sure what we're proposing is vetted and approved by HUD before we just go ahead and approve it. That's what the director has made me aware of. They still would have to submit their proposal to HUD to get approval.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, legal as well, please.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, hold on a minute. All right, I'm trying to see who's talking now. All right, Commissioner from the 5th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're not thinking about the people. I think we need to think about our constituents and the community. We're leaders, and we're going to have to take some opportunities and take some chances from time to time. I think we need to go ahead and approve moving forward to use the money pending whether or not they find legal challenges or what have you, to go ahead and write the script or the guideline or what have you to send back for approval. But I don't think we need to stop it here today. We do too much talking and not enough walking. I think we need to go ahead and approve this pending any hiccups or whatever legally. I don't think so though, because I think the CARES Act, we can use it for a number of things. I think we need to approve it. We need to stop talking and go ahead and start walking. We need to approve this. Is there a motion on the floor, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, there was a motion to approve and you second that motion.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner from the 4th and you seconded it.
Right, and you're looking at small loans, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 just to keep the small businesses going. Is that correct?
That's again, up to 15,000. This was all small dollars that will provide them with the resources that they needed in order to continue to move forward.
Right, so that would cover a lot of businesses here in Augusta. We're looking at small businesses for people who help make our community go, nail salons, barbershops, different things like that. So I think we need to stand up on this one. Thank you.
All right, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so you know, I definitely feel better about what we're looking at as far as funding now, because I was very concerned about taking it from our general fund balance. And Commissioner Williams, I'm ready to help small businesses too, but I'm just not 100% comfortable with it today until I hear approval from HUD, approval from our legal counsel, and more details about the process. The Community Foundation just awarded over $500,000 of grants to the nonprofits like the mayor mentioned. They have a solid process that they use. I think we need to work heavily with them and not try to reinvent the wheel. And I think we can make this happen. Commissioner Sias, I know you have a motion. I can't approve it today, but if we want to try to get all those details and come back with a special call meeting like this week, then I'm definitely willing to look at it.
Well, Mayor, also, we need to think about getting down in the mud and getting stuck in days out, 30 days out, 40 days out. And like I said, I think we need to approve it, and we can put some stipulations on it. If you got some legal challenges or whatever, then that would come up and stop it. So we just voted up or down. Thank you.
Yeah, this is voted up or down. All right, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 4th.
Thank you, sir. All my colleagues raised great points, but here's the one thing I just want to say in reference to the motion. The motion was not to go out and start giving out money to folks or businesses. The motion was to allow us to put the process in place. You can't wait for HUD to approve it unless you have a plan of how you're going to do it. And that is what my motion centered on, not to say, let's take this money and start divvying it out. I absolutely know it. We have to have final HUD approval. But if you look at the letter that HUD sent that we all received, it said develop your plan. And then they will provide additional guidelines for you to be able to get your allocation. But you won't get nothing done unless you have a plan to submit. And what we did today, we can authorize our folks to do a plan. But if we tell them to wait for HUD approval, we're not going to get HUD approval because we don't have a plan. So that was what my motion centered on, is to authorize our folks to go ahead and put a plan together. That's in the HUD letter on the CARES Act. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, but who's doing that though?
Let's vote on it. Madam Clerk, let's take a vote on this.
Mr. Mayor, it's
I got a
not ready to
motion
be
and a
voted
second.
on. Mr. Mayor, it's still not be ready to vote on, because based on what my colleague said, I absolutely agree with him. But you got two things on the table. Are we sending them what we're gonna have ACD department look at? Are you sending them what you're proposing to us? So whose plan is being sent to HUD to vet? And like I say, and as the administrator just said, and I've read the document.
It should come back to us first.
So before it go anywhere?
It should come back to us.
I don't have a problem with that then.
Okay.
So who's gonna do the plan though? Are you taking it
Should
away
be
from
HCD. That's what they do all the time.
Okay.
Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll take a vote now.
Okay. Mr. Clark.
I just got back into the meeting and I missed everything. I'm sorry. Jeff and IT was trying to work with me to get back in. And so
All right.
based on what I know, I'm gonna have to abstain at this point in time until I get more information.
Okay. Ms. Davis.
No, ma'am, not today.
Mr. Fenoy.
Yes.
Mr. Franum.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett.
No, ma'am, not today.
Mr. Hassan.
Yes, ma'am. You can bring it, but if you're coming back to the commission, I can support that. If you come back to the commission, coming back to us.
Yes.
Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams. Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis
Yes,
Williams,
ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Mr. Marion Williams, unmute your microphone. Mr. Marion Williams.
Okay, the motion carries 6-2 with Mr. Clark abstaining and Commissioner Marion Williams not voting.
How about it now, Mr. Mayor? I tried to unmute it several times. It wouldn't unmute, but I got it unmuted now. But y'all, the vote didn't pass, ain't it?
Yeah. In your words, Commissioner, the horse is left the barn.
Too late to catch him now.
Yeah. Madam Clerk, next item.
Okay, that would be item 20. Receive a report from the administrator on the matter of waiving penalties on water, fees, evictions, excise tax, and other items the governing authority has the authority to waive.
Administrator Sims.
Yes, sir.
All right, I think we're gonna bring some folks into the room. Is that correct? All right, we got a couple of folks we're gonna bring into the room. Administrator Sims, do you need Tim, Donna, or any of them?
Yes, that'd be helpful.
All right, okay, we're gonna bring them on into the room at this point. Okay.
Mayor and Commissioners, I provided you all a memo that provided an analysis of the impact of waiving certain taxes, fees, and penalties in order to reduce the burden on our citizen and business community during this COVID-19 break. I prepared a attached summary which addressed each category of the revenue individually, along with the anticipated fiscal impact that a reduction in each category would mean to the city's overall revenue outlook. I would like to emphasize that a reduction or waiver of taxes, fees, and penalties at this time would compound the revenue reduction that has already been realized due to the natural decrease in our economic and commercial activity. At this time, I am not recommending that the commissioners pursue tax, fees, penalty waivers at this time.
Okay. All right. Any discussion?
One other thing, if I can add, Mayor, is that the list provides details on the different categories. And it goes into details as far as how you can see what impact it could cause for us.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions for the administrator? All right, that's the recommendation. We're receiving that. I believe Administrator Sims has sent that out to everyone. You got a copy of that on yesterday. And again, I think that's the recommendation that we hold on taking any additional action at this point in light of potential revenue declines going forward. All right. All right, next item, Madam Clerk. We'll receive that as information. Next item.
Item 21, Motion to approve professional design service contract with Johnson LaShober and Associates for the Jack Kelly Road Sanitary Sewer Extension Project in the amount of $229,840.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Commissioner from the 9th, Chairman of Engineering Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my question would be that was a bid that was won by Johnson, is that right?
Commissioner from the 6th, you want to
Yes,
chime
sir.
in on
Yes,
that?
it
You
was.
make the motion?
Yes, it was, Commissioner. Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy, Mr. Fenoy, Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes.
Bias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Fenoy.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimous.
Thank you.
Item number 22, sir. Item 22, Court of the Ordinary Building, Phase 1 Construction, Historic Augusta, Inc. as the lessee of the property at 52527 Telfair Street, also known as the Synagogue and Court of the Ordinary Building. It's requesting approval of the proposed Phase 1 construction work on the Court of the Ordinary Building for the Augusta Jewish Museum.
All right, Madam Clerk, we're going to invite Eric Montgomery into the conversation as well, into the conversation right now. I believe he's here to speak on this matter. And I'm not sure about Kate Mason. She's also out here. Kate Mason, I don't know what her role is.
Mayor.
Mr. Mayor got a question, I guess, before Eric will come in.
Okay, well, he's in right now. Both he and Kate are coming in. But you can ask your question.
Okay, my question is, Mr. Mayor, there was a deadline for raising their money to get this going. Has that not passed?
I can't speak to that. Again, I think let's take the questions from Eric and we'll give him an opportunity to tell us and or the attorney.
Rob Sherman, sir, is here.
Okay, Rob.
Rob Sherman, yes, sir.
All right, okay, give us a minute. We're gonna get Rob in here as well. Okay. All right.
Are they just requesting approval, no taxpayer dollars from us? Is that what we're approving?
I'm not sure. That's why I want to hear from the petitioner and Rob, and then let's take the questions in. All right, Director Sherman, if you could start us out with other business with regards to where we are with the Court of Ordinary, and then we'll hear from Eric Montgomery, and then we'll take some questions as well, okay? Director Sherman. Rob? Director Sherman. Can you hear us? Rob's got audio problems. Director Sherman. Okay, we're going to come back to him until we can get his audio worked out. Eric, can you provide us with an update on the Court of the Ordinary and where we stand with regards to phase 1 construction?
Yes, sir, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. To answer Commissioner Williams' question, the deadline is in July 2021. It was a 5-year lease. There were a number of benchmarks that were in the lease. We've met all of those benchmarks, which would include organizing a board, getting a 501c3 status, a number of things, and we had regular reports that we were supposed to turn in, which we have met all of those deadlines. And so at this time, the lease said that before any work can begin, it must be approved by the city commission. So what we're asking today is for that approval to be given. We've raised the money to do the initial phase 1 work on the Court of Ordinary building, and we bid that work out. We have a successful bidder, and right about the time this started, we would have hoped that he would have been able to start as soon as you approve. And we have the money in hand to do that. So we're asking for your approval of our plans that I also submitted. I noticed they weren't part of the agenda package, but I submitted architectural plans and drawings and extensive specs that will be followed. Our architect is Studio 3 Design, and the successful bidder is Duckworth Contractors.
Okay. All right, and again, the goal today is to simply provide an update of where we are in the process.
Well, I'd like to get approval of our request so that our contractor can begin work on the Court of Ordinary.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay. All right, Director Sherman. Rob?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
All right, great.
Repeat that?
Please just give us an update, Rob.
Okay, so in 2016, the city leased the Court of the Ordinary and the former synagogue to Historic Augusta, and subleased it to the Augusta Jewish Museum. One of the conditions in the lease is that before any work is done to the building that will affect the exterior of the building, the commission has to give approval to proceed. That's all that they're requesting. The Historic Augusta and the Historic Museum have gone through a planning stage. They've hired an architect who's designed the plans. They put the plans out for bid. They've had a successful bidder. They are ready to award the bid. There's no expense to the city. This is all coming, the funds for this are coming from those that have been raised by the museum. But to give the go-ahead to work on the building.
All right, fantastic. All right, Commissioner from the 9th.
Rob, I need to ask one question here. When this first came about, there was a timeline there to have the museum people to raise their dollars. My question was, are we within that timeline or not?
I believe that we are, and as far as I know, we are. There were several conditions to the lease agreement. They have met the conditions thus far. The condition that they're working on now is to begin the construction within 4 years of when the lease was signed, and that means the construction is to begin in July of 2020 with an opening date of July, I guess, of 2021. So I believe that they are on track to meet all the conditions of the lease thus far.
Okay, that was my question, because there was some problem and with raising the money, then we had to do some other things. I just want to make sure that we're holding everybody to the same rule, that's all.
I believe so. The last time that they were before you was in June of 2019, and they gave a report. And so I believe that, yes, they are on track to comply with all the conditions.
All right, we've got a motion and a second, I believe.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure who the maker of the motion was.
Mr. Hassan and Mr. Franum.
Okay, great. All right, voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy, Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan, Mr. Hassan,
Unmute your mic.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sayers,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Fenoy.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
I believe that's it, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Madam Clerk, is there any other business before us?
No, sir, that's it.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Peace out.